It's time for hour number 3, the Sports Huddle on ESPN Sports Radio 1300. The phone lines are open at 381-1313. Now, here are Chris Cross, Mike Cameron, and Matthew Laurence.
Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's hour number 3. It's a Tuesday edition of the Huddle. We're at Jack Kane Ford, and I've been trying to say Wednesday all day long because that's when we're normally here. But we're here 2 days now. We're going to be here today and tomorrow as we wrap up the month, and a great time to come out and get a deal. It's always a great time at the end of the month, no different at Jack Kane Ford. We got some great buys. The new Fusions are in here now. We have a supply of them. If you want to go out and see the C-Max, we have those in stock too. You want to check those out? It's a great place at Jack Kane Ford, 11-time President's Award winner, and we're glad to be here. Now, I want to get this winner before I bring up our author because I'm going to give away this book right now. We actually have a winner, and let's see, we let Matthew pick it today, so it's probably rigged. So, what's the name? We have Brian? Brian,
which one of them?
Yeah,
we had two of them.
First Brian or second Brian? It's Brian, our first Brian. Okay, there you go, Brian. He gets a book. It's a great book. It's called 100 Things Wildcat Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. It's written by Ryan Clark and Joe Cox. We have Joe on the line with us right now, a forward with this great book by Mike Pratt. As I told you, it'll be a great read for you or a great Christmas present, and it's not too early to be thinking about that stuff. Joe Cox on the line with us now. Joe, welcome to the program. Good to have you here today.
Thank you, gentlemen. Good to be with you.
Well, congratulations on the book. It looks like a great read, and if you're a Kentucky fan, it really is a must for the holidays. What got you on this project?
Well, basically, Ryan, I think, was stuck between a rock and a hard place. He was the author who Triumph went to, and he kind of got stuck. And we've been friends since we were college freshmen together, and he gave me a call, and we were talking about the book, and we talked about it a little more. And then Ryan said, well, do you want to co-write it? I said, sure. So here we are.
Now, you're an attorney. Am I correct on that, Joe?
Yes, you are.
And you practice in Logan County? Was that I don't have the figures here in front of me.
No, I live in Logan County. I practice in Warren County, and I'm in my office right now. So.
Okay. And a Western Kentucky graduate. I saw that as well too. When did you have your love affair start with the Kentucky Wildcats?
Probably in the early Patino years. My family weren't big basketball fans, believe it or not, but I grew up in Eastern Kentucky, and the marriage of Eastern Kentucky's love of basketball and Coach Patino's fast-paced style certainly hit home in my household.
Did you help write the part about Patino? I just turned to it here.
Actually, I didn't. That's not one I can take credit for. It's a 50-50 split, so pick one, and it's a coin toss as to whether it's me or Ryan, but that one is his.
Well, you know, Joe, I have been a lifelong Kentucky fan, over 50 years of following Kentucky basketball. And when you sat down and try to come up with the ultimate reasons, the things you got to know and do before you die, there must have been 10,000 of them that had to come to mind with you.
Oh, we could easily write a second or third or fourth or, as you note, thousandth book. And that was actually what started the whole conversation. Ryan was just trying to work on the list, and he sent me his first draft of the list and said, this is what I'm doing. What do you think? And I said, I can't believe you left out this, and this is way too low. And, it was out of that discussion that the collaboration was born.
When you did your parts of it, you say 50. I can check in and see the you or it's your other guy, but which one of these interested you the most, or you got the biggest kick out of, or surprised you the most? Which one would you pick first to talk about?
One that I was really proud of was Bill Spivey, because I didn't know a lot about Bill. I mean, I'm 32 years old. That was long, long before my time. But the more I read about Bill, the more it reminded me in strange ways of the Enes Kanter situation, and that was what I tried to bring out in the chapter about Bill. But two very talented big guys who both, I think were at least very arguably done wrong by the system and didn't get that ultimate chance to showcase their talents, except that Enes now, fortunately, is playing in the NBA, and wish him well there.
Yeah, you're right about that. I knew Bill Spivey, and a wonderful man, came out of Warner Robins, Georgia.
Right, I understand he was like 170, 180 pounds at nearly 7 feet when he arrived on campus, so they had to put him on that Walter McCarty diet for a while.
Now, one of the other challenges, it would seem like to me, if you go and do like on Spivey, if you go and do all that research, there's so much to say about this guy, and you have really, in all of the names, all of the 100 reasons, you've had to cut it down. You've really had to condense it, and yet you want to tell the whole story. That must have been a challenge in itself.
Yeah, that kind of was a challenge, but it helped focus us. The idea here was to write enough of a simple history that if you pick it up and you're not a longtime Kentucky fan, you can read it, you can catch the big names, and maybe you'll become a Kentucky fan. Whereas, if you are a 50-year-plus fan, maybe you read it and you catch a few details you didn't know before or that you'd forgotten.
Mitch Barnhart is mentioned here, number 56, and Mitch has gotten a lot of heat because of the football program, and we've had a lot of shows talking about this guy. I think he's done such tremendous work in all other areas of the department and making sure guys who didn't even have assistant coaches are taking care of. All the Olympic sports came in, and now he shows up in your basketball article, too, and I find Mitch interesting. Tell me what you wrote about him.
Well, with Mitch, he's done a lot of great work in the non-revenue sports, and certainly with basketball, two coach hires, one that went astronomically bad and then one that's gone astronomically well. I do feel sorry for him in the football situation, in that how to make Kentucky successful in football is a question that's been around since Bear Bryant fled to greener pastures. But it is a big part of the job, but from a basketball standpoint, I think Mitch has done well, and from a non-revenue sport standpoint, he's done well. But football, I guess the jury's still out on that one.
Yeah, the jury's back with their verdict, unfortunately. We're trying to keep him away from the hangman, is what we're trying to do at this point.
Right.
When I first came to town, Wawa Jones was a guy I had met, and I've been in town about 16 years now, and he was one of the first legends I learned about, and what a great guy he was, too. And it's a very interesting part of your book. I like that story.
Right. Wawa was prepared to go to the University of Tennessee, and had been down there, had a very successful visit, and somebody loaned him a car to go back to Harlan, where he was from, and pick up his clothes and his belongings. But somehow he had the foresight. He stopped off in Middlesboro, which actually is where I lived when I went to high school, so it's kind of a personal story to me. Middlesboro is about halfway between Knoxville and Harlan, and Wawa's girlfriend was living in Middlesboro, and she and her family convinced Wawa that he didn't need to be in the orange and white. He needed to be in the blue and white, and she later became Mrs. Wawa Jones, and Wawa went on to be a legend in pretty much everything he ever tried in his life. It was great to see him out there at Big Blue Madness, but yeah, kind of an unusual recruiting story, and one that was fun to tell.
And a terrific athlete, not just basketball, but people don't realize that Wawa Jones was, I believe, all conference in football and baseball as well. He was a terrific athlete.
Right. I mean, like I say, I don't think there was anything that he couldn't play. When people talk about the all-time greatest athletes at UK in any sport, if you leave his name off that list, you just haven't done your homework.
Well, talk about leaving a name off the list. I don't know how you expect to sell this book putting Bob Knight in the book, I'll tell you that. It seems like you're going to incur the wrath of every Kentucky fan there is. Tell me about how Bob Knight gets in the book.
Well, Bob Knight gets in the book because he's a thorn in all of our sides over many years. And that section was actually written by Ryan, but I know it was one of my favorites to read, in that he started out with Bob doing what Bob does, running his mouth off about subjects that he doesn't have a whole lot of knowledge about. In this case, Kentucky becoming a basketball mill with kids who don't go to class and blah, blah, blah. And, Ryan took him to task pretty well on that front. And that section has one of my favorite parts of the book. Ryan's grandfather composed a tune to be sung to the tune of the Christmas song, Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, and it mocks Knight in excellent detail, and we printed that in the book. And I don't know, if I ever come back, I think we'll have to get Mr. Hubert on to sing the song too.
Yeah, I'd like to hear that, because I can imagine what would be roasted on Bobby Knight.
There's plenty to go around, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because I'm telling you, there's a lot of Kentucky fans who go, Bob Knight? What's Bob Knight doing in this book? But you did a proper job on Bob Knight, I would say.
Well, thank you.
Many other things in this book, I asked you one of the ones that surprised you. Give me another one that you really enjoyed writing.
Oh, so many of them were so good. One of my favorites was Bear Bryant, which, again, it's essentially a basketball book, and people say, well, what does Bear Bryant have to do with basketball? Well, this whole dichotomy that you guys have been talking about probably for a couple of months now about can you be successful in football and basketball? Of course, Kentucky was once upon a time with both coaches, and Bryant is responsible for this story that Rupp was so appreciated and he wasn't, that there was a postseason banquet after Bryant led Kentucky to its SEC championship in 1950, 1951, thereabouts. And Rupp was given a new car, and Bryant was given a watch. Well, the only problem with Bryant's story is it's just not true. And I had fun with that chapter. I kind of debunked the story, and the funny thing was the more research I did, I learned that in that general early 50s area, there was a UK coach who was given a new car. But the coach was Bear Bryant. It wasn't Rupp at all.
Interesting. Really interesting.
Yeah, that's because Bear Bryant didn't tell it that way.
No, he sure didn't. He sure didn't.
No, not quite.
When you decided to do this project, and you and your partner are out there doing it, did you need, and if you did you receive cooperation from people in the book? Did you have to reach out to anybody, get your facts straight, or talk to anybody?
There were a few people that I talked with. Ryan, I think, talked with more of them. Ryan had the advantage. He had done a book a couple of years ago, which is still in print, and I recommend to folks. It's Game of My Life, Kentucky Wildcats, where he talked with 50 legendary Wildcats about their greatest games. And so he had stockpiled some interviews from that, but he'd made some contacts as well and was able to reach out to some of those people again. So, you know, he comes at it a little more from that, and Ryan is a little more the journalist. He's gone down that route, and this is his fourth book. Me, I'm a fan, and I'm a fan who's got a bookshelf with a lot of Kentucky books on it, and I could go to those pretty easily. But most of the primary stuff was Ryan's work.
Joe, this is Matthew Laurence. I have a very good friend who you might have heard of, Kyle Macy, his name is. And tell me a little about what's here. I just read. That's why this book is great. I've known Kyle for a long time. I just picked up and looked at the section on Kyle, and there was something in there that I'll be able to rib him a little bit about after the show is over, and that's that he never got a piece of the championship net.
No. Well, I mean, and there you go. That's the sort of thing, we're hitting for. Most of your Kentucky fans, know who Kyle Macy was, although there'll be some who don't, who will get that information. But yeah, even for people, I mean, there you go. You're his buddy, and you didn't even know that. So that's good to hear.
I'm going to call him right after I get off the air and tell him I want to come over and look at the championship net that he must have at his house. I'm going to ask him.
Tom Leach, a guy that you mentioned, along with Mike Pratt, and, of course, the foreword is done by Mike Pratt. Tell me about Tom Leach and Mike, how you fit them in the book, how that went.
Well, Tom is a guy who I've enjoyed, these many years or these few years. Just getting a chance to hear him put his own imprint on Kentucky basketball. And, Kaywood Ledford is in there, too. You can't write about Kentucky and not talk about Kaywood. But in the modern era, Tom's a guy who I think in 50 years, my grandchildren, my children will tell Tom Leach stories kind of the way that, my parents and grandparents can tell Kaywood Ledford stories. So we went through Tom's history a little bit, and one of the fun things with Tom on his website, there are some critiques that Kaywood was kind enough to send Tom when he was breaking in on his announcing, and it's a great insight into both men, and Tom for having the candor to share frank criticism of his work, and Kaywood because Kaywood is as good of a critic as he was as an announcer. Everything he says is spot on, and you can often hear where Leach has incorporated things that Kaywood pointed out to him in the 1990s.
Great stuff. There's a great history book. We're able to talk about all the way from Spivey all the way back, and you cover so many things in this book. But it's also very contemporary, too, the one-and-dones of 2012. We just got done winning a national championship, and that is not left out of this book.
No, not at all. And in fact, here was my drama in writing this book. I agreed to do this, and my wife was several months pregnant. And sure enough, we're getting up on deadline, and the season's moving along, and my son was born on the morning after the Kentucky-Louisville semifinal. My wife went into labor during the first half of the second game, so he held off just long enough for me to see that one, and then we watched the title game in the hospital with him.
Well, you're really glad that your wife had the decency to do that, get through the Kentucky-Louisville game.
Hey, my wife is a champ in so many ways. I totally outkicked my coverage.
You talk about Richie Farmer in this book, and, I've only been in town in my 16th year, I guess, in town. And I remember when I came to town, people laughing and telling me, Coach, is Rich going to play tonight? Is Richie going to play tonight? And I guess all that stuff really happened, and it's good you put him in the book.
Oh, absolutely. Richie, in a basketball sense anyway, is certainly an icon because there's probably no more beloved player. And, yeah, I remember that stuff very well. You couldn't get away from it. Is Richie going to get more playing time? How many shots is Richie going to get? He had his own, Elvis had the Memphis Mafia. Maybe Richie had the Manchester Mafia.
It's too bad it's all worked out the way it has for him, but definitely in basketball, an icon to be sure.
Right, absolutely. And, some of the cats have fallen on hard times after their playing days. Some of the guys have used, success at UK as a platform into the business world. I think of Jamal Mashburn immediately. But,
yes.
And we go for that in the book. You get the happy, you get the sad, you get the sometimes just bizarre.
And finally, as far as my time goes here, the Fiddlin' Five. You talk about those guys, just legend around here.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the team that nobody expected to end up where they expected, or where they ended up. I mean, what an amazing clutch team. Vernon Hatton hitting all those big shots, and Johnny Cox is a name that's still on the list of great scorers at UK, and a lot of great role players. And you can't underestimate that come championship time. The guys who set the picks and pass the ball help you win those big games.
The Fiddlin' Five, I remember I was a little kid, and my father and I drove out. We couldn't get it on the radio because when they played the championship game against Seattle, and we drove around in the car so we could get the best radio coverage to listen to that national championship game in 1958.
You get a lot of those stories. I remember growing up in eastern Kentucky, I knew a gentleman who had worked up in Detroit for a while, and he'd tell me stories of going up on the highest mountaintop that he could find in Detroit and trying to tune in, AM radio and hear Kaywood with the call. And it's that kind of devotion that even more than the wins and losses makes UK basketball so special.
And we got so fortunate last year. Not only did we get that national championship out of the one and dones, but one of the great players to ever play in this campus, Anthony Davis, came through in only 1 year, but I'm sure he's going to go on to a great NBA career, and we'll all get a chance to say that we saw this guy play around here. One of the great ones. I'm glad he's in this book.
Well, and the funny thing with Anthony Davis is he was always on the list, but he was very, very low on the list. And as the season, wore on, we started this. We were looking at it back in January, looking at it in February, and Anthony just kept going up and up and up. And, where Anthony ends up, I'm reluctant to say, just in case anybody wants to scan the list for themselves, but I think he ended up as the second highest rated player and very high on the list. And if you saw the original list, the number that Anthony was at, you'd probably question my sanity.
Well, and it's kind of how his career went. I think, being a kid that not too many people were after, he grew all those inches, and all of a sudden the guy's a player and everybody likes him.
Well, I can't wait to see what he does at the next level. I think he's a foregone conclusion as the Rookie of the Year, but the sky really is the limit, and I just hope he can stay healthy and stay focused, and if so, watch out.
Well, it's pretty hard to critique this book. There's not too many things you come up with. I'm a little disappointed in Ashley Judd's outfit. I wish he was in the hockey jersey, but other than that, I think it's it seems like an absolutely terrific book, and Ashley gets some nice treatment from me.
Well, super fan right there. We've got her in there. We've got old Bob Wiggins makes the list. I mean, the fans are a big part of the tradition, and so 2 or 3, 4 of them are on the list of 100. Couldn't leave them out.
Well, we gave away one of these books today. I hope we have some more to give away. I know they are going to be great Christmas presents for people. Can you find it anywhere? Can you get the book?
You can find it just about anywhere, but a special thing I want to point out on Saturday, November the 10th, so that's not this Saturday, it's next Saturday, Ryan and I will both be at the Frankfurt Convention Center for the Kentucky Book Fair, 9 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. You can come by and get autographed copies of the book and a lot of other good books on sale there, too.
That's on November the 10th?
That's correct, November the 10th.
All right. Ryan Clark and Joe Cox will be there in Frankfurt, and you can get your book signed. It's a great thing and really does look like a great read, and we thank you so much for being on the air with us this afternoon. We've had a lot of fun with you. Thanks.
Thanks, guys. I enjoyed it a lot.
Joe Cox was the co-author, along with Ryan Clark, of 100 Things Wildcat Fans Should Know and Do Before They Die. It's a great Christmas